start? Right. Good morning, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. Many thanks for coming for this international conference, press conference for defending the press freedom. First of all, Legislator Charles Chen. First of all, let me introduce the panelists today. Former President of Republic of China, Taiwan, Mr. Ma Ying-jeou. And the chairman of the Kuomintang Party, Johnny Chiang. And the former vice chairman of the National Communications Commission, Mr. Liu Zhongde. And the former editor-in-chief of the Central News Agency, Mr. Neil Liu. First of all, we will let every speaker to make some remarks, and then we will open the floor for the praise here today. Since this is an international conference, so we will ask the foreign correspondents to ask questions first, and then we will open more questions for domestic correspondents. So now I will invite Chairman Johnny Chiang to speak. Please.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Especially all the praise from, no matter from Taiwan and international. Welcome to today's International Press Conference. Yesterday is the International Human Rights Day, but ironically today is the day one of Taiwan's television news channel is to be shut down by the ruling party, DPP. This shutdown defiles Taiwan's intensely proud culture of freedom and democracy. As such, we have convened this international press conference so that the international community can understand the gravity of the situation. The National Communications Commission's repeal of the Zhongtian CTI news channel's license has already severely subverted freedom of press on Taiwan. We sincerely hope that the international community will take this situation seriously. The people of Taiwan are currently confronted with the possibility of freedom of free expression will be met with persecution. We also sincerely hope that the international community will join us to defend the human rights of free press and free speech on Taiwan. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights states in Article 19, Okay, let me say again. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights states in Article 19.
这个看看。
Hello. Okay. Let me say again. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights states in Article 19 that everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media, regardless frontiers. We wholeheartedly agree. We believe that the free speech and free press are fundamental, universal human rights. On the other hand, the Tsai Ing-wen administration has abused executive powers to suppress or to stifle opposing viewpoints. This abuse unequivocally cast a dark shadow on Taiwan's international image of human rights champion. If a ruler, for the sake of personal preferences or for the sake of evading media criticism and oversight, wantonly abuse the state apparatus to intervene in the personnel appointment of independent organizations such as the NCC, or worse, demands that this independent organization cooperates in shutting down a news channel, then this independence is fake independence. In reality, this organization becomes the equivalent of a secret police. The NCC's failure to be properly independent and objective not only undermines press freedom, but worse, its failure tarnishes the very democracy and freedom enshrined in our Constitution and cause our nation to trend toward dictatorship. The media serves to oversee the government. The media should not serve as the government's mouthpiece or makeup artist. If a ruler abuses the nation's resources to meddle in operations of media and to smooth opposition viewpoints in society, then the ruler is depriving the people of the right to express themselves. This is not democracy, and this is more like dictatorship. Once freedom of press perishes, the next to suffer would be freedom of speech and freedom of thought. Thus, we must loudly oppose and fiercely resist this sort of government. Silence will only bring us closer to dictatorship. Taiwanese society has called into question the repeal of CTI news channel's license because the Tsai administration's decision to repeal was based mainly on political consideration. This May, secret documents leaked from the ROC presidential office clearly revealed that an high-level official state, two newly appointed NCC commissioners are pro-DPP, so they can cooperate with us to deal with CTI. Although the presidential office denied the content of this document, it is very obvious that the CTI News channel's license repeal was due to a scheme prepared by the authorities. Taiwan's deep respect for free news reporting environment was hard won. Furthermore, media oversight of the government has helped Taiwan's democracy be open and transparent. However, CTI shutdown has caused all levels of Taiwanese society to feel that the Tsai administration, for the sake of terminating opposing voices, have suppressed freedom of press. This separation has restricted the expression of diverse voices, diverse ideas on Taiwan. As our needs, environment, and viewpoints trend toward uniformity, Taiwan's democracy will become a hollow shell of formal itself. I once again call upon the international community to pay close attention to this issue of Taiwan's current rulers shutting down a television news channel, thus severely subverting Taiwan's long guaranteed free expression of opinions and freedom of press. The Tsai administration, by means of executive force, has meddled in the position of the media. This meddling will reduce the diversity of voices on Taiwan, and will obviously have an adverse effect on the development of Taiwan's democracy. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chairman Zhang. Now I'd like to invite President Ma to speak, please.
Chairman Jiang Qizhen of the KMT, former Chairman of NCC, Liu Dongde, former Vice President of Central Daily News, Mr. Liu Zixiang, friend from the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. 今天我怀着沉重的心情，穿上我平常参加公祭的衣服，来这里哀悼台湾即将消失的新闻自由。I come to this press conference with a heavy heart. I especially wear a black suit to mourn the disappearance of press freedom in Taiwan. In 1987, President Jiang Jingguo lifted the 38-year-old martial law on Taiwan and Penghu. The government then relaxed the political party ban, the newspaper ban, and restored the parliamentary elections, opening really a new page in Taiwan's democratic reform. On July the 6th, 1993, the legislative yuan passed the Cable Radio and Television Act, thereby lift the ban on news broadcast media and contributed to the establishment of various satellite TV channels. Under political reform adopted by the KMT government, Taiwan's freedom of speech and freedom of the press leaped forward a great deal. On April the 7th, 1989, a political activist, Zheng Nanrong, set himself on fire to protest the lack of 100% freedom of speech. To commemorate Mr. Zheng, the DPP designated April the 7th as Freedom of Speech Day. On April 7, 2017, President Tsai Ing-wen pledged to defend Taiwan's hard-won democracy and freedom at the ceremony marking the Zheng Nanrong. On July the 13th, 2019, President Tsai criticized the Hong Kong government for suppressing freedom of speech and emphasized the freedom of speech, emphasized that Taiwan must support Hong Kong. On January 9th, 2020, Time magazine published an interview with President Tsai in which she said Taiwan's freedom of speech is one of the best in Asia, the freest place in Asia, and also has the best environment for the media. President Tsai's words are still stirring in our minds. However, today, December the 11th, is the last day of CTI News, one of the largest Taiwan major TV news stations, TV Channel 52. President Tsai has actually scandalously engaged in a sort of strong arm suppression that only happened in autocratic countries in the world. So the press freedom which she declared to defend is being pushed to abyss. Now, the CTI News being shut down, but the Thai government also enforced a book ban. A legally published children's book, Waiting for Dad to Go Home, 等爸爸回家, was removed from the bookstore by the Ministry of Culture just because it contained content about mainland China's fight against COVID-19. In this instant, Taiwan has actually turned the clock back to 40 years ago when books and magazines are censored and banned. Last year and this year, National Taiwan University professor Su Hongda and the Chinese-American Jason Lee were even taken to the police station and interrogated by the police for criticizing the government. Incidents such as this were happening. And the DPP government will not tolerate any criticism in the government. President Tsai is destroying the freedom of speech guaranteed by our Constitution. In March 2008, when I was elected president, the 12th president of the Republic of China, I received a message from President George Bush Jr. of the United States, where he said, Taiwan is a beacon of democracy to Asia and the world. President Tsai is actually destroying the freedom of speech guaranteed by our government. In March 2008, when I was, however, since the DPP came to power in 2016, Taiwan has become more and more distant from freedom and democracy. Many government agencies have transformed themselves one by one to serve the partisan interests of the DPP government. The Tsai government even passed an Anti-Infiltration Act, 反渗透法, 2 years ago to suppress free speech in the name of national security, turning the state apparatus into a party thug, as if my cousinism of the U.S. in the 1950s is alive and well in Taiwan today. Now, I'm holding the press conference here with Chairman Jiang to inform the international community that the foundation of democracy in Taiwan being laid by all the Taiwanese people after the lifting of the martial law has been ruined beyond recognition under the leadership of President Tsai. This is a one-party autocracy and a one-woman dictatorship. The Tsai government does whatever it wants. The U.S. Department of State releases country reports on human rights practices every year. In this report, freedom and speech and freedom of the press are its benchmark. Freedom House, an NGO based in Washington, D.C., also published the annual report called Freedom in the World. In the last 4 years, the two organizations have both been silent on Taiwan's regressing democracy and freedom. So I'm calling on these two organizations to take a long and hard look at Tsai government's policy and practices like shutting down news channels and suppressing freedom of speech. I also call on friends from all over the world, especially American friends who have always valued freedom and democracy, to concern about the rolling back of totalitarianism in Taiwan. In fact, Taiwan's proud liberal democracy has become an illiberal democracy, to borrow the term from Farid Zakaria of the CNN. What worries me the most is the chilling effect, 寒蝉效应, of these moves, that other media may be forced to keep their mouths shut to avoid retaliation. But I think we should not be afraid to speak up. We should fight to keep our precious free speech. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, President Ma. Now, I will invite the former Vice Chairman of the National Communications Commission, Mr. Liao Zhongde, please. Liu Zhongde, please. Thank you.
总统、主席、各位在座的媒体朋友先进， 虽然今天是国际记者会呢，但是在座有很多是台湾的媒体朋友，所以是不是容许我用中文来发言，然后请曾先生呢再来做英文的翻译，感谢各位的谅解。我是2006年2月22日成立的 NCC 第1届委员兼副主任委员，但是其在同年的7月21日，司法院做成了释字第613号的解释，宣告行政院是国家最高行政机关，基于行政一体指挥监督 ，NCC 不能例外的是它的从属机关。行政院院长对 NCC 所有的委员，包括主任委员及副主任委员呢，拥有完全的人事决定权。这一号解释出来之后呢，就种下了 NCC 丧失独立机关的地位，也违背人民对它应该有的政治独立性及中立性的期待。我这边跟各位在回忆呢 ，NCC 这几届委员呢，他们怎么样在决定呢所有的通讯传播的重大事业的取照或换照。第1届的委员呢，总共到任9个人。最重要的一个通讯传播事业的证照呢，是中国广播公司股权转让负责人变更的案子。NCC 有鉴于呢，通讯传播事业呢，只能够因势利导，不能够呢强力的加以管制，所以在这一个中广的案子里面呢 ，NCC 呢只做成行政指导，要求中国广播公司呢，在股权转让跟负责人变更的时候呢，能够接受呢几项的一个所谓的宣誓跟承诺，譬如呢，在所谓的媒体的影响力呢，不能够全面的操弄，这样的一个行政指导呢，充其量只不过是一个建议的性质。但是在第2届委员之后呢 ，NCC 呢开始转用呢行政处分付款的这样的一个条件。这个付款呢，就是你如果在取照的时候呢，违背了这些付款的要件呢，那么你将来在6年的效期当中呢，可能呢就丧失了你的证照。最有名的例子是2010年年代综合台，因为呢1年内有2次的违规事件，它的自播率呢不到40%，所以呢就在它的6年效期当中呢 ，NCC 呢做成了解除条件，所以呢这个证照就失效了。在同年的12月31日呢，年代综合台呢也被在期限内关台了。这个是 NCC 呢变本加厉的在传播事业中呢用了所谓的解除条件的这些个付款。所以我在这里沉痛的去回忆呢有关 NCC 的这些当要给通讯传播事业的证照的时候呢，应该是建议的性质、辅导的性质，而不是用这种所谓的强烈的假换照之名行审查之实的这样的一个方式。有鉴于通讯传播事业呢，它是一个日新月异的一个行业，而且呢在经营上面呢投注了相当的人力跟物力，以及呢财政的这样的一个所谓的投资，所以在取照换照这样的一个关节当中呢，应该不管是人民，不管是经营者呢，对于行政的预测可能性呢，应该要加以确保，除非有法律明定的特殊事由， 而禁止他再继续拥有这个证照之外，譬如违背了国家安全，譬如呢违背了所谓的性平事件、青少年保护，但是这些呢都有其他特别法的规范，而不能够在广电的法规中呢来作为付款，甚至作为取照换照的条件。所以我个人的结论是 ，NCC 这种家父长式的管制方式呢，不但背离了时代的潮流呢，今后呢也没有办法通过司法本案判决以及人民社会层层的检验。感谢各位的参与，谢谢。
Yes, thank you, Mr. Liu. Now, Mr. Zheng, please translate the speech for us. Thank you.
I served as the first vice chairman for NCC in 22nd of February 2006. But in the 21st of July 2006, the Judicial Court made the constitutional interpretation number 613, promulgating that the executive yuan is the highest authority in terms of the executive branch, and the premier has the absolute say on the personnel of the NCC, including its chair and vice chairman. From that point on, the NCC lost its independence as an agency. The first session of the NCC had 9 commissioners, and one of the major cases handled by the first session was the BCC license renewal, during which the first session of NCC made some administrative guidance as recommendation for BCC to abide by. However, since the second session of NCC, they started to use supplemental articles which may jeopardize the license over its 6-year period. For example, in 2010, Era Variety Channel saw its license dismissed due to 2 of the dismissal criteria being fulfilled, one of which being the 40% first run rate. So the license for Era Variety was revoked on the end of that year. Broadcasting and television businesses require long-term stability and heavy investment, and therefore it calls for administrative predictability for them to run their business. In the absence of special causes for license non-renewal as prescribed by law, their legal status for continued operation should be protected. And therefore, I call on the NCC to use non-corrosive measures and use make recommendations and guidance and provide guidance to these businesses. Thank you.
Thank you for the translation of the major points that he just delivered. Now, I'd like to invite Neil Liu, the former editor-in-chief of the Central News Agency. Yes, please.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, George, and President Ma, Chairman Zhang, Professor Liu, and my dear colleague of the press corps. I would like to begin my brief comments by quoting what the legendary journalist Mr. Walter Cronkite has to say about the ideas of freedom of the press, to highlight the importance and seriousness of the issue we discuss here today. Cronkite say, I quote, "Freedom of the press is not just important to democracy, it is democracy," end quote. The First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution contains not only freedom of the press, it also includes freedom of speech, assembly, religion, and the right to petition. If one freedom is infringed, others are unlikely to remain intact. Free press and vibrant journalism are underpinnings of democracy and a pluralistic society, infusing different voices and debates on issues of public concerns and public interest, and holding the government accountable. Unfortunately, the DPP government despise those fundamental ideas and principles and choose to suppress them. Professor Larry Diamond, a senior fellow of the Hoover Institution at Stanford University, also an expert on political democratization, established a 12-step checklist on how a democracy becomes autocracy. The top 5 steps of the checklist are: the first is to demonize and delegitimize political opposition. I think President Ma should have the strongest feeling on this one. And the second is to undermine the independence of the courts, following by to undermine the independence of the media, gaining control of public broadcasting, and constrain internet freedom. DPP's government's political manipulation fits perfectly Larry Diamond's model to autocracy. Shutting down CTI TV is not an isolated case. It's a deliberate act played out by the book, and it's only the tip of the iceberg. From the perspective of a Western journalist, we, each and everyone in this room, devote our life to pursue truth, nothing but the truth. In addition to our own professionalism and dedication, we need free and full access to information. We also need sufficient platforms and channels to effectively share quality news story with the audience. And at the end of the day, market mechanism and the audience should have the final say, not government intervention. By silencing CTI TV, over 400 CTI employees are deprived of their right to work, and the chilling effect is pervasive and prevalent. The public is deprived of the right to know, and the society as a whole is deprived of freedom of the press and the different voices. It's a lose-lose-lose situation, no winner. December 11th, 2020 will be remembered as the darkest day in Taiwan's hard-earned democracy, as CTI TV is officially going off the air. Taiwan deserves a free press, a democracy. We call on international community to express their concerns and support to save Taiwan's democracy from being extinguished. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. As a moderator of this conference, I would take the privilege to contribute one point on this. I think I can remind you a very important sentence that is still written on the party platform of the Democratic Progressive Party. In Chinese, it says, 保障人民表达意见的自由，政府不得设置任何言论检查制度。And in English, I would translate it into, in order to protect the freedom of speech for the people, the government should not set up any censorship to examine people's speech. I think the problem for the ruling government is that they forgot, they got the problem of dementia. They forgot what they said before, and they forgot what is the principle written nowadays still in their party platform. Now, let's move on to the question part. I would say later we will answer the question in Chinese, in Mandarin, and then we will translate it into English. And since this is an international conference, I would invite foreign correspondents to ask a question first, and then we will open the floor to the domestic correspondents. Yes. Do we have any foreign correspondents who want to ask? Yes, AP? Yes? Please. Microphone, please.
Distinguished guest, this is Dajin for the Associated Press. I have a question for former President Ma. We are talking about the freedom of press today. This is what you have been talking about since we came here. However, regarding the revoking of the license of the television stations TI, the Reporter Without Borders has issued a statement about this, saying that the revoking of the the license of CTI has nothing to do with freedom of press. I would like to know your response about this. Thank you.
I don't understand the rationale of your 我们要中文的哈，
对，用中文请。
他说这个拒绝这个 renew 他的执照啊是无关新闻自由，我想这跟大部分的想法人都不一样，因为它是一个新闻台，新闻台主要的工作呢就是提供新闻跟评论，然后帮助人民呢对公共事务能够形成看法。如果他把这个管道剥夺了，就减少了我们社会不同意见的出现，这绝对不是一个民主社会的正常现象。所以你去问任何一个国家，除非是个集权国家，关电视台就是伤害新闻自由，应该没有什么可以讨论的地方。
Yes。
可是我说的是无国界记者组织针对中天频道没有获得他的这个新的执照这件事情，他发表了他的看法，就是说这件事情跟言论自由没有关系。我想要知道马前总统的看法。
你可不可以也一并告诉我他为什么这么说？
你要问无国界记者组织。
因为他这样讲法，我觉得非常奇怪。不像是一个新闻从业人员应该有的看法，所以我刚刚讲嘛，除非是在一个集权国家、新闻不自由的国家，没有人认为这个是合乎保障新闻自由原则的。
我补充一下啊，如果我没有记错哈，大家可以查一下。If I remember right，2005年陈水扁政府决定不准7家电视台换照的时候。在最后执行之前呢，当时的 RFS 便认为是违反新闻自由，那这个屈从于政治考量，令人无法接受当时这个可以去查一下那15年后，轮到中天这个 case，RSF 它的立场呢，却有完全不一样的转变所以这个也是我们令人好奇跟不解的地方我想实际的理由应该还是要问这一个组织，我们尊重每一个组织他的想法跟理念，我想这也是我们今天在谈言论自由、在谈新闻自由的当下那对于他们为什么做这样子的一个立场上面的 presentation， 这应该由他们的自己来说明。但是在台湾社会还有台湾民主社会的今天，大家看待这个事件基本上都是不能接受的认为不管是在新闻自由跟言论自由上面，这都会造成很大的一个冲击。
对不起，我再补充一点刚刚在我的致辞里面呢，我特别提到了2个有关自由民主的组织一个是美国的国务院，它每一年都会发表各国的自由人权的保障的现况。另外一个呢，就是总部设在华盛顿的自由之家，它也是会就公民自由这些各国的表现呢做出报道跟评论。可是我刚刚也说嘛，过去4年，民进党政府从设不当党产委员会转型正义委员会这些许多违反法治原则、违反民主，他们都没有讲话。所以当时我今天在那里没有讲嘛，这次是不是可以开始讲话了？这个台湾人民这么关切的事情，他是不是可以开始讲话了？否则的话呢，我想我们以后不能把它看作是一个保障人权跟自由的组织了。谢谢。
好，在这个我们翻译马总统跟江主席的回答之前，我跟各位做一个补充。事实上，无国界记者组织台湾分会他所设的执行长兼发言人是艾伟昂先生，而艾伟昂先生也已经表示说，他是这个无国界记者组织台湾分会的唯一的发言人。而至于其他的董事或者是个人的会员，对于这件事情所发表的声明，与他唯一的代表 代表这个组织的这个是完全无关的。那么这个组织应该要有艾尔昂本人才能够做代表组织的发言。我要跟各位来做一个说明。好，那我们是不是请来翻译刚才的一个答复
？CPI News is a news channel in Taiwan. It provides people for channel for comment and information. Unless we are in an authoritarian country, the shutting down of a news channel is cannot be considered as something normal. If we recall, in 2005, during the presidency of President Chen, there was the closure of 7 TV channels, for which the RFS said that it was against the freedom of press. However, today, the RSF has made a swing in its position, and for that we do not understand why. You might have to ask RSF for their reasons. We, of course, respect individual organizations, but in today's democracy, shutting down of such a news channel is unacceptable. It's a huge impact to the freedom of press and the freedom of speech. In the U.S., there are organizations such as the Freedom House that publish annual reports on the degree of freedom of individual countries. We call on them to view the case here in Taiwan and call on the necessary reforms that should be taking place here in Taiwan. Thank you.
两位的都翻译完了哈。All right. Do we have any other questions from foreign correspondents? Please, please raise your hand. Otherwise, I will open the floor. Yes, from Hong Kong TVB, right? Yes, 欧国强 please.
香港 TVB 请江书记，国民党会不会担心这一次的中天的事件会让国民党或者所谓的蓝营的影响力受到影响呢？那我再请教马总统，你可不可以谈一下说，目前在各个华人社会里面，台湾保障新闻自由的意义或重要性是什么样？就第二个问题是跟您请教说，在目前各个华人社会里面，台湾保障新闻自由的意义在哪里呢？
好，谢谢。台湾今天的媒体环境，大家应该都会去看，可以去听。在一个正常的民主国家当中，媒体基本上应该是监督政府，在野党也是监督政府，所以媒体才会是被称为是所谓的第四权。但是各位可以去看一下，今天台湾所有的新闻台，它的新闻内容当中，到底有多少的百分比是在监督政府，又有多少的百分比是在批评在野党，特别是国民党。所以今天对于中国国民党来讲，我们所在意的是一个媒体的环境，新闻的自由、言论的自由。还有这样子的媒体自由环境，是不是能够有效的来做到民主里面对拥有权力者的一个制衡跟监督？这是中国国民党所关心的。但令人遗憾的，这样子的机制，在整个目前执政的民进党政府当中，并不得到重视，甚至有很多的迹象显示，政府透过各种的方式手段，包括政府的资源，介入在媒体的立场跟表达当中。我们可以去翻开政府所有的每年度的预算当中，到底有多少是花在买电子媒体、网络媒体，还有之前被揭发出来的所谓1450这些等等的标案当中，有太多了。这个已经严重的扭曲了台湾的民主自由跟新闻自由的环境。我想这是我们更关切的事情。中天只是一个个案， 我们更关切的是整个台湾新闻自由，还有言论自由环境。再加上我们看到政府现在动不动就以涉违法的方式来让人民噤声，不敢讲话，这是更严重的事情。如果各位把近几年被政府、被警察单位以涉违法起诉的案件，这2年都是去年就有200多件，今年才上半年而已就100多件，这在过去是不曾发生的。所以人民的言论自由也受到严重的威胁。我想这是今天虽然是所谓的 CTI 中天新闻台的关台，但是我们更关切的是整体台湾人民的言论自由跟新闻自由的环境。
No, not yet. Translation? 对，是不是马总统先回答，以后再翻译呢？
那个像 TVS， 你可以再把你第2个 question 再问一遍。
他说，对于华人的保障的这个意义是在什么地方？以华人的角度，华人世界的角度，
台湾啊，
对，
我想各位都知道，我们台湾在这个解严之后啊，大步迈向一个民主社会，各个方面呢都可以说达到这个世界的标准。我们当然不希望，当我们继续往民主发展的时候呢，我们看到威权又在复辟了。有些人他虽然是号称是民主，满口都是自由民主，但做的事情都不是，这就是我们最大的问题。这个如果不改的话，我们这种现象还会继续发生，这就是我们在台湾呢必须要面对的，而必须要改进的事项。
好，谢谢。那我们是不是请郑先翻译一下？要。
Media are considered the fourth power for its oversight of the government. We call on your attention to see how much attention is paid overseeing the government by the press here in Taiwan, and how much is paid on overseeing KMT in particular. An effective media environment for the freedom of press and freedom of speech is a measure to balance and oversee the power of the administration. However, importance is not attached to such mechanism here in Taiwan. If you look at the budget and of the government, you can see how much is appropriated to buying on online media and so forth. There have been hundreds of cases against the Social Order Meeting Act, and that signify an impact on the freedom of speech and freedom of press here in Taiwan. As Taiwan left the era of martial law, our democracy is on par with global standards. And however, the recent practices by the current administration is considered to be backtracking in this regard. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any more questions from foreign correspondent? Yes, at the back, please. Please specify yourself, please.
My name is Dimitri. I work for the Asian News Network and for the local newspaper called the China Post Taiwan. I have a question for Chairman, KMT Chairman. Well, the ruling party has launched an all-out campaign that started months ago about political correctness, and we've seen senior members of the government, even the president, in international media almost every week. And I don't know if you remember during the presidential inauguration, the president just mentioned that thousands of news outlets, and she had seen thousands of news reports of Taiwan, and praising Taiwan in the international media. So my question is, number one, why did it take so long for the KMT to react to this issue with CTI News? And my other question is that would you take any actions at the legislative UN to invite other legislators to state one more time how, press freedom is so important in Taiwan? Thank you.
是不是要翻译成中文的问题？好，来，请。
有两个问题，第一部分是针对中间特照这个事情，为什么国民党花了这么久的时间才做出反应？第二个问题是，请问国民党在立法院会不会提出什么样的动作？
中天撤照这件事情他在10月10几号的时候实际上国民党就已经有强烈的反应我在我们的中常会发表一个相当严肃的声明。那时候听证会还没有召开以前，听证会在10月26号召开的。我是在10月的应该是前2周的礼拜3的中常会，我已经发表一个声明，针对中天这件事情表达国民党作为一个在野党的关切。那尤其是这件事情影响的不只是中天新闻台的这个营运，它还严重会影响到台湾的新闻自由、国际的形象，还有所有员工的权益。所以国民党实际上是都有在关注关切，但是我们知道这整体它所影响的不光是某一个新闻台的运作，它还包括整体台湾新闻自由的一个环境言论自由的一个环境。那立法院这边其实也非常的关注，立法院跟我们的这个国家政策这个基金会已经召开过好几次的记者会，包括昨天也有另外一场国内的记者会当然或许这是我们第一场国际的记者会但是在过去这2个月当中，实际上我们召开过很多场的记者会，来针对中天新闻台关台这件事情、撤照这件事情，还有新闻自由关心的事情，持续表达我们的关注跟关切。
Yes, please, Mr. Zheng.
Before the October 26th hearing, the KMT I have made on behalf a strong in the early half of October regarding the shutdown of CTI News Channel. KMT, as the opposition party, we believe that this incident is not the closure of one single news channel, but an overall event impacting the freedom of press, freedom of speech of Taiwan, as well as its national image and employee rights of CTI. The Legislative Yuan attached importance to this issue. We have also held press conferences through our National Policy Foundation. So in short, the KMT has been paying great attention and attaching great importance this and to voicing our opposition of this matter.
Okay, now I will open the floor to domestic correspondence, but 现在我们第2个部分，我会邀请国内的媒体来提问。那因为国内媒体比较多，我是请各位先提1个问题。那如果说还有第2波的时间，我们可以再开放第2个问题来询问。那国内媒体是不是有问题要请问，请举手。
Nobody has a question. I have a follow-up question. Sorry, you didn't answer the question about legislative UN. Will you take any actions there? And the follow-up question is about.
对不起，请用麦克风。
I'm sorry. You didn't answer the follow-up question on the legislative UN, and also a few years ago, under the Chen Shui-bian administration, there were also some threats of shutting down TVBS. Do you see anything related to what's happening right now to CTI News?
立法院的部分我们会持续关注。那尤其是在今天过后，当然 中天电视台还会采取它相关的法律的作为跟措施来争取他们的权益。这方面我们全力支持他的法律上面应该有的权利。我们在立法者的角度，我们也支持他们去做这样子的动作。那关于2005年陈水扁那一次跟这一次的关系，您这个问题很好，因为2005那一次后来并没有关，因为国际有重视，国内也重视，大家都重视，最后陈水扁总统他也悬崖勒马。前几天施明德先生也公开讲，他为了这个事情，请人 pass message 给陈水扁总统，说关掉 TVBS， 他是讲 TVBS 关掉 TVBS 不会让这个台湾的生意更美之类的啦。那我想同样的事情，今天虽然不是陈水扁总统，是蔡英文总统，但是都是中华民国的总统。我们在这边也沉重的呼吁蔡总统，想一想当年的陈水扁总统是怎么样处理新闻台的事情。当年的陈总统，那时候2005是没有 NCC 的，在没有 NCC 的状况底下，最后陈总统都没有去关台撤照。现在有 NCC 了，那蔡总统至今没有出来对这事情表达任何意见，这是令人相当失望的一件事情。虽然你可以讲 NCC 是一个独立机关，但是对于这样独立机关做出这样的决定，蔡总统你自己的想法是什么呢？我们也很想知道。谢谢。
We will continue to support CTI News Channel through our LY, and our representatives in LY will continue to pay attention to this matter. We support CTI in legal actions to safeguard their rights. Looking back to 2005, during President Chen's presidency, the case on TVBS was that it was not shut down, and because the decision was changed at the last minute due to international and domestic attention. Schmidt also on President Chen that the shutting down of TVBS wouldn't make Taiwan a better country. However, today, President Tsai, who is also the president of the Republic of China, as President Chen was, back then in 2005, there was no NCC, and President Chen did not shut down TVBS. But today, with NCC, the so-called independent agency, President Tsai has made no comment on the shutting down of CTI News Channel. We are very curious on her opinion on this matter.
All right, thank you. 我们还有没有任何的问题？国内媒体这边，或者任何的媒体朋友？All right. So up on this point, I will conclude the press conference. Thank you for all of you for your coming, and I wish you all the best for the rest of the day. Thank you.